You're listening to the Educated Cowgirl Podcast, Episode 2. Passions. The equine industry is full of people who have a passion for horses and wanted to turn it into their life and career. If you ask any equine professional, they will tell you if you want to be in this business, you have to completely love it, because it will become your life. And on today's episode, I will be talking about just that with one of my dear friends, Kelcey McNamee, who is a wife, a mama, a cowgirl, and a barrel racer. Also, she is someone who embodies what it truly means to put everything you have into your passions and your goals. She inspires me with how she trusts God with the plan He has set before her to help guide her on her journey to the success she's aiming for, and is one of the hardest working cowgirls around. In the episode, we talk about how her faith drives her goals and how her family inspires her to keep going and to remember the simplicity of competing. We also talk about the reality of the industry and the strong work ethic it takes to keep working towards your ambitions, even on those days when you have a setback or you feel overwhelmed. But you have to have that support system behind you to remind you of why you are doing this and to help you along the way. Kelcey is also starting to make quite a name for herself in the barrel racing and rodeo world, which you'll hear more about in this episode. I absolutely cannot wait to share her story with all of you, and hopefully you will feel inspired by it. So, without further delay, let's get into my conversation with Kelcey. Hey, and welcome to the Educated Cowgirl Podcast, hosted by yours truly. My name is Abby Carpenter, and I am a cowgirl and equestrian through and through. I started this podcast wanting to make more of an impact in the equine industry. That's why I am making it my mission to help promote the industry to the public through sharing my love for horses through education and bringing other experts and professionals onto the podcast with me to discuss important topics that impact the horse community. So whether you are a crazy horse lady like me, want to learn more about horses, or want to learn more about the industry, you've come to the right place. On this podcast, we will be talking about ownership, horsemanship, fitness, faith, breeds, and so much more. We believe that it doesn't matter what type of saddle you ride in or the breed of horse you may ride. We all contribute to this community to make it great, and that there is always something to learn from the back of your horse. So grab a coffee and get ready to take some notes, and let's get started. This is the Educated Cowgirl Podcast. So, welcome to the Educated Cowgirl Podcast. Thank you so much for being here. I know you're super busy with your schedule and your horses and everything. But first of all, I wanted to talk about where you just were. Tell listeners where you were just competing, because it's kind of exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. So we just got back from Heber City, Utah. We were there for the American Contender Regional Semifinals. So this is my fourth year making the American, and the Contender Semifinals, the Regionals, is kind of the equivalent of what they had in Fort Worth for the semifinals. Right. So it was a new format this year, and it was exciting. Didn't go exactly how I was hoping it was going to go, but it was a fun time. So.
Yeah, because I followed a little bit of your how it went and everything, so I think it'd be helpful for the listeners that you did have a setback that happened during that rodeo. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I ended up getting bucked off the morning before the first round. The day before, they had a warm-up that we were able to work the pattern. So for anyone that's, just starting to rodeo or going to these bigger events, I am a full proponent of taking advantage of open arena time. I think that benefits you and your horse to be able to get in there, see where the barrels are going to be, make a good game plan. The first day actually went really, really good. I was really excited going into the second day, and 4-year-old colts and negative degree weather don't always coincide.
No, it doesn't.
We went to warm up, and the bronc riding event commenced, and I did not stay on. So I ended up fracturing 3 ribs out of the deal all before I had to kind of get my game face on and compete. So we said a prayer,
Yeah.
I took some meds, got wrapped up, and we went and tried to make the best of it and managed to place high enough in the average that we get to move on to the wild card round at Globe Life Field. So,
which is really exciting because there's probably a lot of people who didn't that would love to have that opportunity. So that's exciting.
Yeah.
So I was thinking back a little bit about our friendship and how we met and everything, and if I'm remembering correctly, we connected first through Sarah Ostrand online with Riding Strong and followed each other. And then I think I met you for the first time at Northern Colorado Cowboy Church when I was sitting with Sarah the first time I came in person.
Yes, yeah.
And then, but we didn't really get to know each other until 2019 at the Arise conference.
Yes.
Which
was amazing.
Yeah.
and I knew your sister. I worked with your sister.
Yes, at the rec center at CSU.
Yeah, in college. So we go back.
We go back a little bit. So, first question I just want to ask is, I know a little bit about your background. You grew up in a rodeo family. Your dad's a team roper. But can you just talk about how you got started in barrel racing and what inspired you to turn it into your life and your career?
Absolutely. So I actually grew up on the AQHA show circuit, was where I kind of first got into horses. I did 4-H. My dad was a horse trainer, and he trained quarter horses and paint horses, mostly for Western pleasure, and then we had a couple of halter horses too, and so my childhood was spent in a barn. And I can't even imagine a life without horses. I mean, that's been imprinted on me since day one coming home from the hospital. And so my brothers and I grew up training ponies and just being on colts all the time. And I started barrel racing. We had just moved from Windsor to Alt, Colorado, and a lot of the girls in my class, they all rodeoed and did barrel racing. And so I honestly kind of got into the barrel horse side of things because I wanted to fit in and have an outlet to make friends.
Right.
And so I took my Western pleasure horse and loped very pretty circles and did flying lead changes in between, and kind of embarrassed myself for a little bit, but I do believe that that was kind of God's plan all along. I became very passionate about it, and like I said, I can't imagine a life without them. And so we went through high school rodeos, and I had some success there. And then moving into college, I decided not to college rodeo. I don't rope or goat tie or any of that, and so I went ahead and bought my permit when I went into college when I was 18. And I had a cool horse. Some of the listeners will remember Frank. He was the first little sorrel horse that kind of put me on the map. And we won my permit money in the first 2 rodeos that I ran at. So I went ahead and bought my card and kind of went on from there. I've had lots of really cool horses in between him and where I'm at now. And I worked at a vet clinic. I dropped out of college to start my job as a vet tech at Countryside Large Animal in Greeley, and I was there for just short of 10 years, and God just kept pulling on my heart that there was something different, that I wasn't utilizing everything that He had given me, and that He had built this platform for me to be kind of dedicating my life to gain ground for the kingdom. And so I quit my job last October, so I've been at this for a little over a year now, and I can't say enough about what God has done and the movements He's made in our life since doing that. So now I train, I rodeo full time, and I've been blessed with some really great clients and friends that have kept me in plenty of horses, and I got to try all different things last year that I wouldn't normally have gotten to try. So it's been a huge blessing, and met good people, and just been a really cool deal. Yeah,
that's really cool. And I think how you started barrel racing can speak to a lot of little kids, because they probably started on like a Western pleasure pony at like a saddle club show or something. And so like hearing that like it can happen for anybody.
Oh, absolutely.
It's so great.
And at all ages too, I think that the horse industry gives the perception sometimes that you're limited. If you didn't grow up in a horse family, or you didn't grow up in a rodeo family, or you didn't, you weren't raised in a barn, that, you can't have a place in this industry. And I think the more people that we have that can prove that wrong, the better. My mom was a city kid through and through. And I will tell you, there's no other person that I would trust with my foals. She loves having foals and does great imprint training and can start them on the ground. And she didn't come from any of that before she had met my dad. And so, I speak to everybody when I say, like, if it's put in your heart, God put it there, and it doesn't matter what age you are, you can start from scratch.
Yeah, I love that so much. So speaking of your heart, and that's one of the things I love about you and how you compete in the sport and with your faith and combine those two together. And so what and or who inspires you the most to get up each morning to work with the horses and compete even on those hard days?
I think the physical being is probably definitely my family. When you have a kid, that changes everything. You're not doing this for yourself anymore. I want to prove to him that you can have a dream and go after it, and I want for him to see firsthand the work ethic that goes into this each and every day. But, God wakes me up every morning to be able to do this. And honestly, like, my favorite book in the Bible is Psalms, because it's written, all of God's promises are written so poetically. And that was my grandma's favorite book in the Bible too, because, you read through Psalms and you just have every promise laid out for you in such a beautiful, eloquent way. It's kind of like a love letter from God.
Yeah.
And so honestly, like, every morning I get up, I read Psalms, and I just remember that God is my driving force, and He's the reason I'm doing this. And to be able to reach out and touch more lives and show more people what God can do in your life. It's a mustard seed of faith.
Yeah.
And I've got way more than that, but that's all it takes. And I guess that's my main hope, is that doing what I'm doing and the routes that I'm taking and the platform that I have, that someone will see that and say, wow, God did that for her. What can God do for me? And gain ground for the kingdom that way. So.
Yeah. Oh, I just love every word of that. That's so great. It's so inspiring. Also, something that is very real in the horse world is burnout. And having those moments when you feel overwhelmed and you're stressed out, or you have a setback, like you get bucked off, or anything along that journey. What are some things that you do to help in those moments to rediscover that passion and that focus when you feel like you've lost your love for the sport? And what advice would you have for others who may be going through the same things?
I am probably the poster child for burnout. If you ask my intern and my husband, I have a hard time with this sport because I do want to be successful at this, and I do work hard at this. I mean, I'm riding today with fractured ribs, even though nobody really said that was a good idea. But I think the biggest thing that has been spoken to me repeatedly by close friends that I have is to remember that this is what we do. It does not define who we are. And I know I've spoke a lot about faith, but that's really where it comes back to, is that God makes us a son or a daughter of Him, and finding our identity in Him and understanding that He put this passion in our heart not to define us, but to have us have a platform to speak to who He is. We were built in His image. And so on the hard days, I do cry. I do cry a lot, and I do get frustrated a lot, but spending time in prayer and just reminding myself every day, like, this does not define who I am. What I do in the arena may inspire somebody, but what I do outside of the arena is equally as important. And so holding myself to that standard, that sometimes the win is that you make a clean run and get to run at a place like Loeb Life Field, you know, and or sometimes the win is you get on your colt and you're able to go and cruise a pattern with fractured ribs and, you know, not pee your pants in the process. So I really try to focus on different things other than just the successes in the arena, and that really helps a lot.
And I remember, like, why you even started riding in the first place.
Yeah, you always have to remember that little girl. I mean, you can speak to this too because you grew up in the same life that I did.
Yeah.
You always think of that little girl. I remember I was always just so in awe of my dad. You know, like he would bring a horse out, a 2-year-old out, and he'd work with them for an hour or so, and just the transformation that took place. And I just try to, or, you know, even with my mom, you know, I would see my mom go in and work with a foal, and 2 days later, this foal is walking up to her with the imprint training stuff. And so I always just remember that little girl, the whole reason we got started, and I remember how proud she would be and how cool she would think I am right now, now that I'm grown up, how cool it is. So
yeah, that's exactly, like, you just think back, you always have to remember that little kid inside you.
Yeah, absolutely.
That just loved horses, and they didn't even think about the career that it could lead to.
Yeah, yeah.
They just wanted to get on their horse.
Yeah. Well, and having Crew around, Crew turns 3 at the end of this month, and, like, the innocence that I get to be around him every day, like, he doesn't understand that there's a bad run, you know, and he just now caught on to the fact that hitting a barrel is a bad thing. And so, you know, like, I could hit all 3 barrels and the trash can on the way out, and Crew is still proud of me, you know, because he doesn't understand the difference between good and bad. And so I try to keep that in mind, like the simplicity of it, like, yeah, you can have a bad run, but you also have good runs too, and just keeping that in mind.
And just so good. I could talk about that forever, but I don't want to keep you here forever.
Oh, you're good.
So something that we've touched on in the interview, but is how you put your horse first and make sure that they're taken care of on the road and at home. And I believe that will bring you the most success, is when you think about it in that terms. And then, so besides from social media, how else do you share that with others?
Social media is huge because you can reach so many more people on that level. And obviously, like, you can reach the masses with one, you know, post. But anytime that I'm somewhere and someone needs something, I'm right there to help them. And I think that makes me a little bit different in some aspects, because I want my competition to do as good as they're going to do on that day. And so if someone needs help, I'm the first one to be there and helping them out. And you know, the younger generations, when they come for lessons or anything like that, or they're seeking advice, that's the first thing I talk to them about, is the importance of taking care of your horse. Because if you don't have them, like, you're not going to be able to do this. And, you know, God gave us those animals and we have dominion over them, but at the same time, our dominion over them is our responsibility to take care of them through and through. And so it's really important that we do keep in mind, I'm probably a little bit overzealous when it comes to caring for them, but I just want them to feel perfect, because when they don't, they're not going to give us their all either.
Yeah, and I mean, that just speaks to, like, promoting the horse community in general. When, like, other people see you helping others, it brings us together. And that's something that I really hope to bring with this podcast, is to bridge that gap between disciplines and between breeds and between the horse community. And, like, I said this on my first episode, but community over competition.
Absolutely.
Like, just, you have to, like, think about others, and, like, you may want to win and compete, but, like, if you're not like, also rooting them on at the same time, what's the point? Like,
well, and I think barrel racers get a bad rap because we're all, in my opinion, from what I've heard, you know, when I tell somebody new that I'm a barrel racer, it always comes with a very negative condemnation. And I think that you know, comes from the fact that there are a lot of us that are cutthroat. Like, I'm here to win, and we've got ice water running through our veins, and you never know what that other competitor is going through, or if they've been in a slump, or if, you know, they got bucked off the day before. Like, you just don't know what they've been through. And so I try really hard to walk in the light of God and Jesus and love everybody and be there for everybody. And at the end of the day, I think it was Dane Kissick that actually, he was a calf roper, and I was getting ready for my first American, and I was so nervous because that was the biggest thing I had ever qualified for. And I got bucked off the day before that too, so maybe it's good luck, I don't know. But Dane told me, he's like, there's no reason to be nervous because at the end of the day, God has written everybody's book. It's already written. Yeah. Your path is already written.
He has the pen.
He's got it. And so you just show up. He's meant for you to be there. You show up and you do what his will is and you do your best. But it's already been written for somebody else. And having that perspective too has helped a lot because sometimes it's just not your time to win.
Right.
I work really hard at this and I do have great horses behind me, but it takes work to keep them competing at their level. It takes work to learn new horses, new setups, the whole thing, and sometimes it's just not your time. Right. And you have to be patient for that time. It comes for every person that I've talked to about God's timing and waiting for your time, it's come to them. And they've come back to me and been like, you were right, it just takes patience. And it's really hard to be patient in any of our sports, you know, like in sorting or the Western pleasure classes, you know, any of that. I've had so many people that are like, man, I just wish it was my time. And it's like, just wait for it. Like,
just keep putting in the work and God will provide it for you.
Exactly. There's blessing in the waiting. So it always helps perspective too.
And so with that, as you know, like the industry has seen a decline in recent years, and with inflation and the pandemic and just costs in general going up. And as someone heavily in the rodeo world and very much in the horse industry, what would you say is much needed to help promote the community to the public and to help grow? And how can we make it more inclusive to them?
Man, that's a hard question.
Yeah.
I know more about like the barrel racing thing, obviously, and the rodeo thing, and there are lots of efforts in the barrel racing to make it more economically fruitful for everybody. They came out with the stallion incentives, and that's been huge in the futurity world. And you know, you see on, again, social media, but you see a lot of people complaining, well, this has even become more of a rich man's sport because you have to buy the horses to run for the big money. And there is some truth about that, but I think that those programs are promoting more growth. They are trying to make an incentive, that's why it's called an incentive, for people to continue to breed their mares to these stallions, continue to train for the big money rodeos and the big money futurities. You know, the American, again, say what you want about it, but it's a huge opportunity for a lot of us that aren't ever going to be able to run for $1 million in our lifetime. And it takes money to get there, and it takes a lot of work to get there, and the odds are, you know, very slim that I will walk away a millionaire, but it's a chance. And so I think there needs to be more focus on the youth of our industry and making sure that they know they can do it, and having trainers be more open to teaching kids and having the opportunities for the horses that, you know, not to make a bad phrase or whatever, but the backyard horses, you know, the horses that aren't going to circuit rodeos or circuit sortings or big AQHA shows, but just the 4-H horses, and having more opportunities, reach out to them, that they can learn that you can make money doing this. It's very difficult, but the English world has it figured out. Like, I talk to my dressage friends that are trainers, and I'm like, holy cow, like, Western people don't pay that for training or for lessons. And I know Clinton Anderson had a very vulgar podcast about it too, but he talks about the same, like, we all have to get, instead of being in competition with one another, we all have to be able to get on the same page and grow as a community, and make it so that there are more opportunities open to more of us, because that's the only way that our businesses are going to thrive. Like, I can't sell barrel horses if there's not more barrel racers coming up that want to ride them. I can't train barrel horses if there's not more colts coming through the programs that need trained. So we have to, instead of saying, well, I charge this and I want all the training horses, we need to be, you know, putting more effort into making more horse trainers so that we have more horses coming through the ranks. I think that's my opinion.
Exactly. No, like, that's exactly right. We need to, like, promote to every single person matters. Not just like what big name is gonna bring me the most money. Like, those, that it could be just like a Saddle Club kid that just wants to learn how to barrel race and, like, has those big dreams to go to the American, which is such a big rodeo and gets such a large audience, especially since Teton Ridge has come into the fold. But, like, you have to reach every single person matters.
Yeah. Well, and I think that that's what's disheartening. You know, like, I have youth girls that take lessons with me, and they're like, well, so-and-so beat me today. It's like, and I don't want to do this anymore. And we have to focus that there's so much more than just the winning. Like, this is a long-term gain. I have friends that are excellent trainers that are not great jockeys.
Right.
You know, that they like to train and they don't like to compete. So
Right.
it does take everybody. You know, I like to do the fraternities, but I am more rodeo geared. And so having the opportunity to fraternity, I fell in love with the fraternities, and I think it's great. And I had a really good horse that made it enjoyable for me.
Right.
But I'm also geared more towards rodeo. And it
Right.
takes everybody. It takes the jackpot girls. It takes the fraternity and derby girls. It takes the rodeo girls. It takes, in our sport of barrel racing, it takes everybody.
Right.
And those horses have to have somewhere to go on to. They have to retire to be youth horses,
Right,
you know,
right.
or peewee horses or whatever.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's where it does take, it's a group effort. And I think that there's a lot of industries that could learn from that too.
Yes, exactly. And we touched on this a little bit, but a part of that, and we touched on the stereotypes a little bit of different breeds and disciplines, and the stigma that's around it, which unfortunately barrel racing is kind of gets hit the most with those stereotypes.
Yeah.
But with that, and with like with what we just talked about, the steps education-wise with like the incentive programs and things that can also help support the growth and get people more involved.
Yeah,
with
absolutely.
horses.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think you know, I came from a show background, and so I didn't grow up barrel racing. I learned everything from family. Like, I had a great aunt that stepped in and she's like, these slow, perfect circles are not going to cut it. But coming from that background gave me a basis on where to start. And I think that, you know, if more kids started in the show world and then grew up, you know, with the horsemanship and everything behind it, that's the number one thing I teach all of the youth kids that come to me for lessons. We start with horsemanship first, because you can't go fast if you can't get it right.
Right,
slow.
yeah.
And so I think pushing more for the 4-H thing is amazing. Like, I grew up in 4-H. I think there's so much that you can learn from that. I didn't grow up in FFA, but I know FFA has a lot of great opportunities too. And so having more kids start in those programs younger is going to help build our entire ag community, whether it's in the horse world or somewhere else. And so it's important that as adults we try to form our youth. You know, we're the ones building the way for them to keep going. And in the world we're in right now, it's a very difficult thing.
And I think that's the biggest stigma with barrel racing and with some rodeo events, is that a lot of people are like, oh, they don't know how to ride. They just want to go fast. And it's like, it's actually very untrue. Like, it takes a lot of skill. Like, I would not feel safe getting on a barrel horse just because I do not know how to, like, myself how to ride. I'm a very accomplished rider.
Different set of buttons.
It's a different set of buttons than a cow horse. But, but I'm very much proponent of the youth. And just, that's always been my passion, is to promote them, because they are the generations that are going to keep this going.
Well, and let's be honest, it's easier to convince an 8-year-old that starting a new hobby or sport is cool, other than like a 22 or 23-year-old. You know, like, it happens, but you're going to reach more masses starting younger, and giving them a better opportunity too.
And so with that, the final question I want to ask is, what advice would you give to those sitting on the sidelines, wanting to get more involved and learn more about horses, like those little kids who are watching from the stands and hoping to turn their love for horses and the sport into their life or career?
First and foremost, ask for help. Like, you can't be scared or nervous to ask for help. I have asked for help in all different circles. I've been denied help and embarrassed that I got denied help, but at the same time, like, that led me to the next person. And there are people in our industry that are going to be able to help you and be willing to help you and to help guide you. And so you can't be afraid to put yourself out there and get the help that you need. Work ethic and initiative are huge. You know, I get up early in the morning and I take care of my family, and then I come and work and go home and take care of my family. And so it's all doable, but you can't make excuses as to why it won't work. You have to find a solution for working. And I have been blessed with great help. I have a great intern that comes and helps me out, but that was something that I needed in order to be able to make this work, and so I went ahead and I did it. There are lots of people that do this all by themselves, figure it out as they go.
Yeah.
And so you have to decide where you're at, what you need, what you're capable of, and find the solution for your problems. And then just keep the faith, pray about it. And if God is really speaking to you and you're really wanting to take that step, the biggest thing is to take that step.
Yeah.
And whether that's, starting out cleaning stalls, starting out feeding horses for someone, the more you want to be a part of it, there are plenty of ways to get into it and then to keep it going.
Right,
so.
exactly. So, to end in a little fun little note, we're going to play a little this or that game.
Okay.
I'm going to give you 2 different choices, and you have to choose either one. Some of them are rodeo related, some of them are just for fun.
Okay.
So the first one is indoor or outdoor rodeo.
Ooh, what time of year is it?
Yeah, that's a big part of it.
I'm going to say, oh man. I'm going to say indoor rodeos because of the energy that you get. Yeah, outdoor rodeos are fun, but indoor rodeos for sure, have a different energy to them.
Nice. All right, so this one's just for fun. A fun night out or a quiet movie night at home?
Oh, fun night out.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, this one might be a little harder, but Colorado rodeos or Texas rodeos?
Ooh, man.
I know it's hard with the American and everything, but...
Well, man, okay, I'm going to say Colorado rodeos because I love our circuit and I love where we're at. So I'm going to say Colorado rodeos.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So trail rides or arena work?
I like trail rides.
Yeah.
I do.
Yep. Kind of lets them be a horse for a minute.
Absolutely.
And stuff. Yeah. So this one, I changed it a little bit because of Louie.
Yeah.
Mares or stallions?
Bears. Louie, his register name is Liquid Courage 72, and as Abby said, he's a stallion that's owned by 70 Ranch Performance Horses, and he's amazing, and he has a really great character. He's actually a really good stallion, but traveling with stallions just has a whole other level of responsibility and planning, and mares have the grit to get through anything, and they'll be there for you through everything. And as much as I love geldings and quirky stallions, they are very dependent on their people.
Yes.
So,
so
mares for sure.
Yep. So this was so fun, and I loved every minute of it, and
I love that you're doing this.
Yes.
This is cool.
Yeah, and this is like the first interview I've done for my podcast, and it's
my first podcast interview.
I hope
so great. Okay.
It's been so great, and thank you so much again for being here and taking time to do this, and just best of luck in the rest of the season and in Arlington. Where can people find you on social media to follow along with your journey?
So on Facebook, I'm under Kelcey McNamee. On Instagram, I believe I'm Haas McNamee. Let me look real quick. Sorry.
You're good.
So on Instagram, it's Kelcey.Haas, Haas, McNamee, McNamee. And I also just recently got on the TikTok, so you can find me on TikTok too, and that's where I post everything. So
nice. So and I wish you nothing but health for your horses and your family and yourself, and you heal well.
Thank you.
So thank you again, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Wow, don't you just love Kelcey's heart for the sport, her faith, her horses, her family, her fellow competitors, and the future of the industry? She is exactly who I wanted when I started this podcast for you to hear from, as she is someone who understands the big picture of working hard to achieve your goals while also knowing that that is only a part of who she is, and pursues God first in everything she does, from caring for her family to her training program and more. She understands that it takes everyone working together to make this industry strong for future generations, and that there is no shame in asking for help when you need it. I hope you took just as much as I did from our conversation, and it inspires you to find a way to get involved with horses if you feel that calling to do so. And that you don't have to buy the most expensive horse or saddle in order to compete. As long as you have that dream on the inside of you and the work ethic to pursue it, you can do anything. If you need to know how to find Kelcey on social media to follow along on her journey to Globe Life Field and more rodeos, I have put that information in the show notes. Also, please let me know how you liked this episode by leaving me a rating and review on wherever you're listening to this podcast on, as it can really help me to see how you're liking it so far and how I can make it better. Also, feel free to share this episode on your Instagram stories and social media pages, and make sure to tag me at The Educated Cowgirl. I can't wait for you to come back for the next episode where I will be interviewing a brand new guest. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the Educated Cowgirl podcast. I hope you enjoyed it, learned something new, and will come back for more. But for now, stay blessed and ride on, cowgirls.